Hey guys, it's Ben the Coin Geek at Old Pueblo Coin here today to have some fun with you with some currency. We're going to talk a little bit about what's in front of us here. But first of all, if you enjoy the coin and currency and et cetera, entertainment we put out here on the YouTube, and you already subscribed, just so you know, we actually have videos that come out almost every day, and the YouTube doesn't show them to you because the YouTube doesn't think smart enough. It has that algorithm going on instead of actually thinking. So, having said that, please consider joining us pretty much every day at noon Tucson time to be able to find some new content. In the meantime, let's talk a little bit about some of my favorite banknotes. These $10 bills that are national currency. National currency is fun because it is chartered with the federal government. This big number here, the 5105 on this one, and the 1675 on this one is actually the number the bank was assigned as it was chartered. The government loved them enough to give them a number in the order in which they entered line. So they're very fun because they are localized. In other words, here we go with the Wells Fargo National Bank of San Francisco. They're also fun because they can have fun names. So lots of times they're kind of boring. The National Security Bank of Boston, Wells Fargo, Nevada, National Bank of San Francisco. So kind of fun because it is of Nevada, of San Francisco, on demand in California. But there are lots of banks out there. I kind of laugh because it's like if you just wanted to call it your mom, then they would accept that. So these notes were issued. These are both the series of 1882. And what's interesting about these banknotes is that they chartered the series 1882 because the original charter law was only good for 20 years and issued in the 1860s. So that's why they came up with 1882. And what's also interesting, of course, is if you look at these banknotes, they have the same looking obverse. In fact, it is the same design, the same face. But then on the back of the notes, totally different. And if you think that we have inflation now, I mean, I remember when our banknotes went from they went from their design in the 1990s to the big face, and it was like it got less and less. And then we went back to the design with color, which I appreciated more and more. Well, this exact same design was actually used before this on the original charters. There's the same design, but the back had this really epic picture of DeSoto discovering the Mississippi in 1541, and that was the back. And now they replaced it with this, which had this really kind of cool design to it a little bit. But then this is the charter number again, really big. And then what's fun about these, of course, you've got actually the state seal of Massachusetts there. So that was kind of cool, right? But then all of a sudden you go from that to this, and it's like, well, I don't know. It just kept getting more and more less. Like big empty space here. There was actually another series after that. Actually, they ran concurrent. I shouldn't say after that. That went from having, instead of saying $10 in it, had the date in the middle of 1882 and 1908 because it was the time frame during which that was used. And so the different denominations actually all have the same back on them. So if you look at the back of a 5 on this note, or the note that says 1882, 1908, that's the same design element. Of course, the different denominations would say $5 or $10 on those. These notes are fun for lots of reasons, one of which is, of course, it actually gets to talk about counterfeiting or having the counterfeit items with you, and they talk about all of the things that could go wrong here. And of course, the punishment, punishable by a $1,000 fine or 15 years imprisonment at hard labor or both. Cha-cha. So this note, of course, also you'll notice is cut very off center. In fact, the next note is showing. This is a pretty typical thing that would happen because the notes would get hand cut. They had a machine that would hand cut some of these, and so you'd see them off just a little bit on these guys. Of course, as I look at these two notes, I just can't help but wonder what happened to 42. So one of the things that oftentimes I had mistaken on these banknotes is that I would look at them and I always thought that these notes, the brown notes, were always older than the blue notes, and actually they circulated and were printed concurrently. So there's not necessarily necessarily an exact correlation to age based on the design, although the brown notes did come out first, and then the date back notes, and then the denomination back notes. Let's look a little bit at that design. Of course, we have the discovery of electricity here is the main theme for these notes. Ride the lightning, look at that. And then this is actually good old Benny Boy, right? So you've got Ben Franklin here and 1752 date. Once again, looking at the cool artistry. Remember this? There's the key. There's the kite. There's Ben Franklin with his Farmer's Almanac hat. Hashtag not sponsored, and a young man sitting there with him. And so that is the theme for these notes for the $10 bill. You know, each of the notes had a little bit different theme to them. And something that a lot of people don't notice right away because it doesn't look like Ben Franklin that we're used to until you look pretty close. You're like, oh yeah, that looks just like a Benjamin Franklin half. So now all you guys out there who have Benjamin Franklin half dollars and you need to buy a banknote, you need to find a national banknote that has Ben Franklin on it. One of my favorite things, of course, about these notes in general is just the locality. So depending on where you live, you know, you might have a real hard time finding a banknote of this style from either your state or your city, but especially if you're in the western states, Arizona, New Mexico, Montana, Idaho, all those, Colorado, all those places, you're going to have a harder time finding those banknotes than, say, if you're from Boston or New York. You have a better chance of finding a nice type note that'll fit the bill for you. All right, guys, what did I miss? You guys who specialize in currency, tell me the other things that you would have pointed out on these notes. In the meantime, guys, there's just so many great notes out there to collect. I highly recommend, if you're going to get into notes, to start with a national banknote from a state near you. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Ben the Coin Geek. You can subscribe by clicking on the owl button in the corner and watch more videos on the right side of the screen. Thanks.